everyone, and welcome to the Investigative Journal. I'm Tal Heinrich in New York. World Vision International is an evangelical Christian humanitarian aid, development, and advocacy organization. It also employs staff from non-evangelical Christian denominations. It is active in nearly 100 countries with a total revenue, including grants, product, and foreign donations, of more than $2 billion. While the organization certainly has, for its 69-year history, carried out humanitarian work in dozens of countries, according to the New York Times, one of its employees is awaiting trial in Israel, accused in 2016 of helping divert World Vision's funding to the Palestinian terror organization Hamas, both in Gaza and the West Bank. Now, this is not the first allegation of World Vision's connection to Palestinian terror groups. In 2012, the Australian government's foreign aid agency was forced to suspend its partnership with World Vision. This after it was discovered that World Vision Australia provided financial aid to a Gaza-based nonprofit whose director appeared to be a senior member of the terrorist group Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Moreover, new documents released by the U.S. government showed that World Vision was funding an al-Qaeda affiliate in Sudan and knowingly did so using American taxpayer money, in direct violation of American law and regulations. To better understand how exactly, we're joined by two researchers of the American think tank who broke this story, Cliff Smith. He is the Washington director of the Middle East Forum, and Sam Westrop, the director of the Islamist Watch program at the Middle East Forum. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
World Vision, a large USAID recipient and a major foreign NGO, gave a government grant to a designated terror group. Sam, we'll start with you. Can you explain how did you uncover this information?
Well, one of the things that the Middle East Forum does is look very carefully at the relationship between the US government and Islamic groups. We want to know that they're working with the good groups and not the bad groups. So we're particularly interested in Islamist organizations that operate within the Muslim world. And as part of that, we look regularly at government financial relationship with groups. And the fact we came across this grant to Islamic Relief Agency, this Sudanese charity, was by sheer coincidence. Islamic Relief Agency appears in the government's own grants data. Their website, USA Spending, lists all the grants they make to both domestic and international groups. And we came across it by sheer chance. And we were surprised to see the name Islamic Relief Agency, because we all knew that in 2004, the US government had designated a Sudanese charity with this name as a Bin Laden-linked charity.
So USAID awarded more than $700,000 to World Vision, and I'm quoting, the goal was to improve water, sanitation, and hygiene and increase food security in Sudan's Blue Nile state. However, $200,000 of that grant was designated for ISRA, the Islamic Relief Agency. Cliff, explain why did USAID instruct World Vision only 6 months after this grant to suspend their relationship with ISRA?
It's very hard to say why this was not caught sooner. What we do know is that at some point after the USAID had given this grant to World Vision, a third party, the International Organization for Migration, a Swiss-based international charity, had considered working with World Vision and their sub-awardees in Sudan, but decided not to do so because they saw ISRA was one of them, and they knew them to be terror designated. At this point, documents clearly show that both USAID and World Vision were in the room when they said it. However, for whatever reason, World Vision didn't cease their relationship till months later. And at that point, the issue got, after the grant cycle had run out, they started discussing it with USAID, claiming still, after having been told explicitly by the International Organization for Migration that this was a designated organization, they still pushed hard to continue their relationship, claiming that they would get kicked out of Sudan if they didn't continue their relationship with ISRA.
There's also, and I think it's worth pointing out, that the idea that World Vision did not know that the Islamic Relief Agency was a designated terrorist organization is very difficult to believe. As I mentioned, ISRA was designated in 2004, 10 years before this grant. Congressmen had been arrested and jailed in the US because of their involvement with this charity. It had made international news because of its terror finance work. There's no way.
Can you name?
Former Congressman Mark Siljander is a very famous case. He served a number of terms of Congress in the 80s and later on became very active in foreign affairs in a personal and business capacity. And he ended up going to jail for a year for lobbying for Islamic Relief Agency to take it off the terror list using stolen USAID money, as it turns out. Again, and this guy is actually a friend of World Vision insofar as he signed different letters and statements made by World Vision in his personal capacity. And apparently, even though he had this close relationship with World Vision and had went to jail for lobbying for ISRA, none of this popped up on the radar for some reason.
Now, part of the
That's what they
documents that
claim.
you covered reveal correspondence between World Vision employees and U.S. government officials, and they show that World Vision went to bat not just for the Al-Qaeda affiliate ISRA, but also for the Sudanese government. Can you elaborate?
So World Vision, once the grant was discovered, and it was discovered that World Vision was working with this designated Al-Qaeda organization, the program was suspended. World Vision desperately wanted to resume the program. So they cited pressures from the regime, government investigations by the Sudanese regime, newspaper articles hostile to World Vision activity. They cited all this, they took it to USAID and said, we are being punished for this, we are having trouble because of this suspension. You should let us continue to work with ISRA, you should allow us to pay ISRA for the work already performed. World Vision then also applied legal pressure. Using friends in Congress and the administration, it then also threatened legal action against the US government for not allowing them to work with a designated terrorist organization. World Vision was desperate for this partnership to resume.
But it seems that some of this pressure really paid off for World Vision, because according to your research, the Obama administration gave World Vision a waiver in May of 2015, allowing them to fund the affiliate until May of 2015.
Yes.
That's right.
So, I mean, why would the U.S. government allow such funding?
I think they were put between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to justify the Obama administration's behavior here. I think funding Al-Qaeda should have been a red line that should never have been crossed, no matter what. That said, by the time they really understood what was happening, World Vision was already essentially claiming, look, we have people on the ground, we have operations intact, we're going to get kicked out of the country, we're concerned about the safety of our employees, things like this, that they were making these, claims that they were going to be kicked out of the country, which may be true. The issue is more fundamental. It's sort of, how did they get in this situation in the first place? World Vision should have known, either knew or should have known, the kinds of games that the Sudanese regime was playing. The only reason, at least to the best of our knowledge, that they even were involved with ISRA was because the Sudanese regime blocked any Western NGOs from going into politically sensitive regions of Sudan, and they required them to work through regime-approved groups. It should come as no great surprise that one of the few state sponsors of terror in the world required Western NGOs to work with a terrorist charity to reach sensitive regions, and of course, this apparently never entered their thinking.
Sam, you've also uncovered that other international organizations and foreign governments, along with USAID, funded ISRA. Can you tell which ones?
Yes, of course. Irish Aid, which is the international development arm of the Irish government. The United Nations has poured a lot of money into ISRA. And today, ISRA continues to try to partner with the United Nations on a number of items. One thing worth noting is that since the fall of the Bashir regime in Sudan, ISRA's future is a little more uncertain. So, it remains to be seen whether international governments continue to work with ISRA by design or by accident over the next few years. And I think it's really very much worth stressing, reiterating, that ISRA was very closely tied to the regime. It helped the regime install itself in the first place and then spread its message for decades after. And of course, while ISRA is Bin Laden linked and therefore should be seen as a terror financing organization, its other role was to advance the ideology of the Bashir North Sudanese regime. and World Vision subsidized that effort. The US
Where's
government
the
subsidized
humanitarian aid part of it?
So here's the thing. Islamist charities do aid. They generally do. They do feed the hungry. They do home the homeless. They do this. But this is a key
But we know that Hamas is doing it. Hezbollah is doing
and
it.
as Eleanor Kagan said under the Obama administration, when you help Hezbollah build homes, you're helping Hezbollah build bombs. It's a key part of Islamist ideology. Hamas, Hezbollah, ISRA in Sudan. If you provide welfare, then you can provide the social side to terrorism. You can recruit, you can gain legitimacy, and most importantly, you can gain funding. It is an absolutely integral part of Islamist ideology to use charity as a means to advance ideology.
And one thing we uncovered that is worth noting, that ISRA was so close to the Bashir regime that Omar al-Bashir personally attended their board meetings, personally.
Oh, wow. We have a lot more to break down. Coming up next, we continue our conversation on World Vision's terror financial problems. A TIJ exclusive story right after the break. The investigative journal TIJ offers exclusive long-form investigations into the leading political, environmental, and public interest issues of the day. Our first-hand investigations focus on topics ranging from human rights, counterterrorism, corruption, cybercrime, just to name a few. These bombshell reports can only be found on the investigative journal from New York. I'm Tal Heinrich. Welcome back to the Investigative Journal. Sam, Cliff, before we continue, I would like to read to you at this point a part of World Vision's response to the story by the Middle East Forum. World Vision claimed that, quote, there was no indication on the Treasury Department's website that ISRA was a designated terror financing organization. In fact, ISRA is featured prominently across the Treasury Department's website. It is also claimed that it took its compliance obligations seriously, but respectfully asked permission to pay IRA money owing for legitimate humanitarian work. In 2018, World Vision published another statement, this time in response to an article in the Christian Post. World Vision said there, quote, ISRA was not known to be a blocked party when World Vision made the required startup payment. Your reaction?
That last part is my favorite. It was not known to be a designated organization. It is possible that World Vision did not know. If that is true, it is because they simply failed to check. If you type in Islamic Relief Agency, ISRA, any of these things into the Treasury's designated search database, ISRA is the only group that pops up. It explicitly says not only are they designated, but that all branches worldwide are designated. A simple Google search will pop up all kinds of information on this group.
But even at the time when they made the payment?
Yes. Mark Siljander, who we mentioned earlier, the congressman that went to jail for lobbying to lift the sanctions on ISRA using stolen USAID money without registering, he was convicted in the early 2000s, years before this program even came around. And again, it's been since 2004 that ISRA was mentioned on their website explicitly. It's in multiple other places. If you just search for Islamic Relief Agencies on Treasury's website, not even going to the specific blocked tool, ISRA will show up as being designated.
And here's the thing, World Vision, this was not the first time World Vision had worked with ISRA. This example we've uncovered, they'd worked with them before. That means for years, for decades, World Vision had the opportunity to do a simple Google search of a group they were giving money to, working with, partnering with, just to see perhaps if it was, they had any problems or issues whatsoever. As Cliff says, it is possible World Vision did not know about this charity's links to Bin Laden, to Hamas, to other terrorist groups. It is highly unlikely.
Why does World Vision keep running into these terror financing problems? Because this is not the first time. This is not the first case we showed before. We're talking about Palestinian terror groups that received aid from World Vision.
I think there are two possibilities here. One is that World Vision is an enormous charity that does a lot of work, and some of that work is good, no doubt. And with any enormous charity, of course, every now and again, they're going to do the wrong thing. With branches all over the world, with enormous distribution networks, of course, they're going to do the wrong thing.
We're talking big money here.
We are talking big money, and it's too many examples for me to be comfortable with that answer. The truth is, I think that World Vision has a strongly politicized agenda that moves it into the sphere of groups like the PFLP, like Hamas, like ISRA, that are willing to exploit and misuse Western left-leaning charities for their own advantage. World Vision is a participant in what I would call the dawah, the terrorist welfare side of terrorism. World Vision is a participant. Whether they are an unwitting participant is another question.
Sam, but excuse me, Cliff, but you know what people could say. World Vision gives the money to these groups who do perform certain humanitarian, acts, as Sam mentioned before. So what if there are some rotten apples on the way?
I understand and sympathize with the idea that there are complexities in dealing with international aid, especially in conflict regions, with, genocidal dictators such as Omar al-Bashir. However, whatever issues you're going to have, whatever complexities there are, there may be some gray area. If you start funding Al-Qaeda, Hamas, that's pretty black. I don't see how you can make a justification for that. And what's more, it's part of American law. And beyond that, they raise the most of their money and they're founded in America. So certainly, respecting the law and not funding Al-Qaeda, whatever gray areas there might be, should be a black area.
Well, in the case of World Vision and the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Sudan, ISRA, we're talking about American taxpayer money, which, people contributing, people don't know, it's not individual contributions. But here's what I want to ask you. What about individuals out there here in the United States? There are a lot of good people who want to do good things for third world countries, for poor populations. What should they be looking for before making such contributions?
I think they should look past the organization's PR. Every organization, World Vision is very good at this. They have pictures all over of people in World Vision jackets feeding hungry children, and people understandably want to be a part of that. That's good. That's right. However, look into what the organization has done, look into their ideology, look into the problems they've run into. If World Vision had taken this problem seriously years ago when they first ran into these problems, perhaps none of this would have happened. I think their donors have a key role in holding them accountable and telling them, look, we want to help people in foreign countries, but we need you to start taking these problems seriously. To the best of my knowledge, no other...
And this story didn't backfire in these terms that you mentioned.
Excuse me?
In terms of donors, I
mean, I don't know about their internal, I can, fundraising. I can tell you that I know people personally that have ceased funding World Vision because of some of these issues and some of the things that we've written. And I hope a lot more do until World Vision starts to take these problems seriously and have an internal audit of what's going on with them and why they keep running into these problems, whether it be ideological, operational, most likely some mix of both.
But you raised a very good question, which was, had we not uncovered this grant, how does the average donor, the average American who wants to do good, how does he know what charity, which charity to donate to without subsidizing?
If we're not talking about taxpayer money.
Right. And whether it's private money or government money, especially when it's private money, how do you know? And one of the things that is sorely missing from this area is big charities like World Vision do not publish lists of their partners. If they were to do this, if they were to be absolutely transparent in who they're working with, especially in places like the Gaza Strip or Sudan or other areas prone to conflict and violence and subject to terrorist influence, then people could make easily informed decisions about whether this charity was working with the right people or not, because everyone can Google, but it takes that initial data from these charities for people to be able to do this. We need more transparency, and then maybe there'll be less suspicion that World Vision is doing these sort of partnership, is conducting this sort of programs with extremist organizations. There'll be less suspicion that this is, intended.
Zooming out of this particular story, let's broaden up our conversation a bit and talk about U.S. foreign aid more generally. President Trump really changed the policy that prevailed in the White House under the Obama administration, and he cut funds to the Palestinian Authority, even to the United Nations, to Pakistan. And his agenda is, as long as you serve U.S. interests, you will be receiving U.S. foreign aid. Once you stop serving U.S. interests, we might cut this funding. Do you agree with this approach?
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, Pakistan's a really good example, because just look at what was happening with Pakistan a few years ago. Money moving into Pakistan, especially from the US, was working its way to places like Kashmir to groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen. These are terrorist groups in Pakistan and Kashmir that are involved with terrorism, involved with extremism, and also involved with the ISRA and other elements of the Pakistani state. Of course, the American government should not be subsidizing a government that is working openly and supporting these extremist groups and terrorist groups. So of course, as a global policy, yes, America should not be funding, should not be moving money into countries that openly partner with Islamist terror.
Your last words here?
I think that it is important that the U.S. government continue to be involved in international aid when it's needed, and I think it should be based on humanitarian concerns, but I definitely think that you should go in with a clear eye and realize when it is being waylaid and misused for illegitimate purposes, which it is with far too much frequency, and this is a very big example of that problem.
Sam Westrop and Cliff Smith, thank you both for joining us and sharing your interest. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up here. We appreciate you and your time. And for our viewers, thank you for watching. This is the Investigative Journal in Times Square, New York.